Let's talk about why I listen to podcasts.
Welcome to the JesseAF show. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Welcome to my daily podcast.
Hey everybody, my name is Jesse Grossbohlin and welcome to the JesseAF show. Today is Friday, September 27th, 2019, episode 228 of my daily podcast. Yeah, that's right, daily. That means every single day I'll be posting a new episode, so please check in tomorrow for my next episode. I'm on Google Play Music, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, and YouTube. So if you have any of those platforms, please consider subscribing. That way you get notifications for whenever I post a new episode. Podcasts are interesting. So what I do is I drive my car to work every day, like a bunch of people do. If you even take the bus to work every day, or maybe a taxi to work every day, podcasts are great for passing time. I use podcasts to get into a mode in my mind. And what I mean by that is podcasts make me think. Okay? A good podcast will make you think about different things that are going on in the world, in what you're listening to. Maybe it's childcare. Maybe it's cooking. Maybe it's the world and what's going on and the pressures from this or that. I listen to podcasts to keep myself well-rounded, to learn more. It's like an audiobook, if anything. I listen to Gary V on Apple Podcast. I also listen to a couple different money talks kind of podcasts, from I can't remember what they're from. It's been a while since I've listened to them, but I like listening to informational kind of podcasts. I like learning more. I like being wiser. I like getting more information in my brain. And when, music is really good for getting a mood. Okay, I'm in a fire mood. I'm really happy, excited, pumped. Tonight's going to be a great night. Yeah, music is great. But podcasts get you thinking. And what I mean by that is, let's look at Gary V, for instance. Gary V always talks about different pressing issues. And he also talks a lot about business. I like listening to his content for business information. He runs a marketing agency. It's really good to learn about marketing. At the same time, he talks about real issues. Like, I was just listening to a podcast where he was talking about parenting and how parenting is a real problem in our society, and it creates fake environments for people or children, and those children grow up in that fake environment, and guess what? They don't know how to live life in the real world. Makes sense. I listen to Gary V for many reasons, marketing and such. I like making a podcast that's very well-rounded. I talk about my daily life. At the same time, I also talk about different things I'm running into, different problems I'm solving, different things that are on my mind. I think it's very important to talk about these things. Sometimes it's more important to talk about other things than others. Current affairs, what's going on in the world. I believe in the idea of transparency. What I'm thinking of is very important to me. So maybe it could be important to you. And I believe that it's fair to talk about things that I'm thinking about that are important to me because they may be important to you. And you might find them interesting. You might find my perspective interesting. You might learn something from my perspective. It's always helpful. Like Apple. I was talking about Apple and their keynote where the label on their keynote was innovation only, and they didn't even innovate for the keynote. It's like, okay, whatever. So I made the podcast all about innovation. I find that podcasting is really therapeutic. It's a lot of fun for me to do. It gives me something to look forward to every single day, something to think about, to make me think a little bit more, to maybe even grow into my diversity and actually be more comfortable with talking in front of people. That's what a podcast does for me. I talk in front of possibly millions of people every single day, even though millions of people don't listen to my podcast every single day. They could, but they don't. That's okay. That's fine. I don't want to be famous from a podcast. I don't care about it. I want to be famous from what I do and what I then translate into talking about in my podcast. Makes sense. My businesses, my school bus driving, whatever it is. I want to make sure that my life feeds into the podcast, not podcast feeds into my life and I have to cater to the podcast instead of catering to my life. That's not what I want. I do not want to have my world revolve around the podcast. A lot of people do that. A lot of people do. See, the thing is I find that a podcast can be very valuable when used correctly. I do not plan for my podcasts. I do not work hard in advance to my podcasts. I basically do as little work as possible on my podcast every single day. I just upload it to my computer, I download it, and then I upload it to YouTube. That's pretty much it. Just cut it, make sure it's 14 minutes or less, and that's about it. Maybe sometimes the podcast version, the audio version, is a little bit longer. That's okay. But I do minimal work. I do not make this podcast a daily job. It's more of me talking to myself. It's more comfortable that way. I enjoy doing it that way because I talk about what's going on in my life instead of trying to cater to the podcast and talk about what's really popping in the world and what people really want to listen to. And that's going on in the world and what everyone else is talking about and everything else. I'm not interested in that. That's not my interest. That is not my podcast goal. My podcast goal is to talk about me, my goals, my struggles, my achievements, everything. I plan on building my own house one day, and I will talk about the process of building my house and what I have accomplished that day, and what I plan to accomplish the next day, and what I've learned from it, what I will learn more about, what I have really done different from the beginning of the process, what I'm going to be doing in my future businesses, what I learned from Valley Life Bros, what I can learn from other businesses that I start, how I could do it differently. This is the podcast. I really listen to podcasts for perspective. I like learning as much as I can from people about their daily lives. Also, at the same time, I like learning about perspective and what they think about things. I do not base my knowledge off of them. I do not cater to the podcasts that I listen to. I'm not like, well, if that person thinks like this, I have to think like that. No, I'm still myself. Sorry, I have like a lot of congestion up here. It's probably allergies or something. I don't know. I'm not coughing a lot. It's not a cold. It's just really hard to breathe. Anyway, podcasts are really good for fine-tuning my intellectual thinking. I was just watching a documentary last night on humankind and evolution and all this other stuff, and it was really interesting. I found it to be really interesting how we went from living in trees to then exploring and growing and learning more about all this other stuff. I thought it was very interesting. And I learned a lot from it. But at the same time, I'm not going to push these ideas onto other people just because I believe in them. I had questions about God yesterday on the bus. I'll talk about God if they want to talk about God, because guess what? I was raised Catholic. Truth is I also believe in God at the same time as science. So I'm very half and half. I will talk about God like I believe in God, and I will talk about science like I believe in science. Podcasts can help me with that, with both sides. Let's say Gary Vee talks about wisdom and how it's important to teach, but also not force people into learning a certain thing or believing in a certain thing because you think they should believe in it. Let's say veganism. Gary Vee always says, you do not have to push people into learning and being like you. If you try and force someone to be like you, that's the opposite of what you should be doing. You should be talking about what you do and why you believe that it is important to talk about it more. And as time goes on, people could adopt it. Makes sense. You do not force anything on top of other people. Because if you force something on someone, they feel uncomfortable. Then they don't want to listen to you. Guess what? My podcast is all about me and my perspective on life. I do not try and force my beliefs on you guys at all. If you want to believe in God, believe in God. If you want to believe in science, believe in science. I believe in both. Honestly, I think that life is the ultimate belief. I believe in the life that I have, and I believe that I will change the world in many different ways. I believe that. That's my belief. You can think something else entirely. You don't have to believe in what I believe in. And with podcasts, I get more perspective on how I should run my podcast. Gary Vee was really helping me through a tough time when I was going through a breakup. That makes sense. I started my podcast because Gary Vee said you should probably start a podcast. It's good for your business, it's good for your personal brand, and it was therapeutic for me. I felt like it was a really good way to talk about my feelings and to talk about the world around me in a comfortable way. Because when you have a girlfriend, you always talk to them about everything that you are thinking about. And when I didn't have a girlfriend anymore, I didn't have anything to talk about to anybody. Or I had a lot of stuff to talk about, but I had nobody to listen to. Or to listen to me. So I started the podcast. I got all my information out. I got all my feelings out. I got everything out in the podcast. First couple episodes were really, really sad sounding, right? I mean, honestly, I started talking about my food allergy like it was the most terrible thing in the world, even though it wasn't really the most terrible thing in the world. I've learned a lot from it. I've grown a lot from it. That's my life. I mean, that's life in general. Doesn't mean that you guys should feel bad for me just because of my food allergy. It's a food allergy. Everyone has these things. Everyone has their faults. That's life. And I'm at 15 minutes. I hope you guys really enjoyed today's episode. I know I did. I will see you guys tomorrow, and I hope you have a really great day.